what I'm planning on doing tonight is to show about 160 or 70 slides of Brother Branham's life and ministry and things you've heard him talk about for years that we've collected over the last 37 years. And I tried to calculate this week how many times I have shown these slides around the world, and I'm sure at least 200 times I've shown them. This week I have looked at them over 50 times. Today I have looked at them 15 times. Either I am overloaded or I want to do this right because I feel like it's something that God has permitted me to do, but I do not know anybody else in the world that does it. This week I've received telephone calls, not from local people because you have respected me and my privacy because I asked you to, but I've gotten calls from almost every nation on earth this week at home. And it has been people who have either just read Acts of the Prophet, or they want to reprint it in their language, or they need more copies, or they want to translate it into their language. I had a number of calls from people that I had not heard from for years, who just in the past few days had seen the video testimony that I gave in Cloverdale or in Johnson City, Tennessee. The ones who didn't call about it called about having the audio on CD. I had comments concerning the edification and the blessing that the supernatural books were to them, and you and I have already read number 5 and we're waiting for number 6, but they're just now getting number 5 and getting it read, and they were telling what a blessing it was. And I thought it was, I cannot remember a time when I ever got as many phone calls or a mail personally telling me what a blessing this was to them. At the same time, I have never received as many criticisms. I was told that the Acts of the Prophet doesn't do anything but take people away from the revelation of the Word of God. I was told that the supernatural books were nothing but drama and dramatic and storytelling fiction. I listened to those people patiently and tried to tell them that, you know what, you probably know all of the facts. You have probably been here. You have probably seen, but what about the people who have never had an opportunity to see or hear? And so it's not for those that I have done this in the past, but when I accept this challenge in my own heart, and I look at Malachi 4, and I see that the scripture says that I will send you Elijah before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord, and tells us what he will do. And when I read in Matthew and in Luke, where Jesus himself says that truly Elijah shall first come and restore all things. And then when I read in Revelations that John the Revelator saw these 7 candlesticks, these 7 church ages, these 7 angel messengers. Then when I read in Revelations 10 that when the voice of the 7th one begins to sound, that the mystery shall be finished. And since I believe that Brother Branham fulfilled those scriptures, it gives me courage, but yet it makes me feel very cautious and very humbling, because if Brother Branham did fulfill those verses and our understanding of that is true, then what a position of honor I have had. But here the government of Yemen has a problem. What will we do with all these people? So they contacted the United Nations. The United Nations contacted America. America contacted the Red Cross. And they sent airplanes over there to fly those people home. And when they saw airplanes, these people would not get on them. until a rabbi opened the scroll and said, "Did not the prophet say we would be taken home on the wings of eagles?" So when the prophet wrote about it, he saw it as eagles. But when it was fulfilled, it was an airplane. So I can say that this airplane, which was purchased by the Shell Oil Company and donated as a gift to this museum out here, is here for a purpose for you and I to understand the simplicity that when a prophet says something, it's the word of God, but then when it comes to pass, it is the fulfillment of that word. And this, I can say, is spoken word before your eyes. This is Tucson Tabernacle that you're sitting in tonight. Brother Branham said something when he dedicated the first tabernacle. He said, we'll stay in this building until we fill it up, and then we'll go to another one and we'll fill it up, and then we'll go to another one and we'll fill it up. And never knowing when he was waving his arm to the left, which was to the north in this direction, that someday we would move into this building. And after we purchased this building and moved into it, we discovered a tape that a brother in Puerto Rico gave me, that Brother Branham was standing behind this pulpit, which is here tonight, and he prayed a prayer like this: Lord, let this little house that we're in tonight be a lighthouse and a refuge alongside the road which weary pilgrims can stop in for rest, and from which missionaries can go out around the world to preach the gospel. I personally believe that that prayer was answered when we bought this building, and what God has allowed us to do in these years. A photograph of this was taken from space by the first people who went to the moon. This is a picture of the earth, a terrestrial ball in which you live. I think it's rather unique that of all the pictures that NASA put out, that they put one out that shows the Middle East. That's Israel right there. Cloud cover everywhere else, but the one they chose to put out shows that one. It's like it's a place that God chose to do something special on this earth with, and we call it the Holy Land. We call it the Promised Land. Most of the things that happened in our Bible happened on that little piece of land, 26 miles wide and 89 miles long. But there was a time when a man wrote a verse of Scripture. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but should have everlasting life. And I believe that this is the world that that verse of Scripture is talking about. I'd like to state one tonight. I believe that God loved this world so much that he sent Jesus Christ, the Son of God, to die for the occupants of this earth, that if we will accept him, we do not have to die in our sins, but that we can be saved. We have been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. But I believe the same God that saw that plan knew that at the end he was going to have to destroy this earth with fire. And I believe that he knew that there was going to be a group of people that he was going to call a bride that was going to be present here. I think he knew the evil and the deception that would be present. And he said, I'm going to have to do something to demonstrate to them again what I mean and how I mean for them to live and accomplish their life. Therefore, I believe that God had his prophets speak about one to come that would turn the hearts of the children back to the fathers. One that would restore all things and correct things that had gone off into error. And I believe that I could say tonight and say that God continued to love this world so much that in the end time he promised to send us a prophet with the spirit of Elijah. And I believe I'm a witness to that event that happened on this world in my generation. People may not know him, but in 1969 in July, these three men became known all over the world. They're Mr. Armstrong and Mr. Irwin and Mr. Collins. They're the three men who made the first journey to the moon. Now, men had been around the moon, but two of these landed on the moon while the third one circled it. They went to the moon and they left their footprints. They planted a flag, but I'd heard somebody say they wouldn't find anything. They went, they spent billions of dollars, but they haven't been back. They brought some rocks back and some stones. And about all they began to do was to leave their garbage and things like that on there. And we haven't heard much about it except we've been to the moon and back. But who was this? He doesn't look like very much. His face is shaded. Maybe you've never seen him. Maybe you don't know. He told me one time, though, that's the way a man ought to dress. I guess I've never been a man. That over there was his dear friend, Brother Banks Woods. He's hunting up in British Columbia with a friend named Bud Southwick. That little rifle hanging right there is a little 22 Magnum that a man named Mr. Skaggs had built for him, and it's one that he killed a lion with, which you'll see later. Looks like he was riding the bell horse, the one that always came home and all the others followed him. Doesn't look like much of an animal, but they're rugged pack animals that Brother Bud Southwick had up there for him to hunt. I want to talk to you about this man, tell you some things I know about him. I talked to the mayor of Jeffersonville, Indiana, Richard Vissing, the first time I ever went to Jeffersonville, this man's hometown. When I saw this sign when I drove into the city from Louisville, Kentucky, I said, I'm going to go meet Mayor Vissing. So I went to his office and saw him and asked if he knew this preacher down the street here that had this tabernacle on 8th and Penn. Oh, yes, Billy's a prophet. I was shocked. I said, well, sir, Your Honor, if he's a prophet, how come you don't do what he says? He said, well, Billy's always told us, you know, he said, I'm Roman Catholic, but he said, Billy's always told us, now look, I'm sent here, and you folks just believe what you can, but you go ahead and be just as good a Christian as you know how to be. And I learned a lesson, that not everybody who saw this man, not everybody who believed this man was going to be a prophet, was going to obey him. And I learned that my first trip to Jeffersonville when I met the mayor, Richard Vissing. I had read in a book entitled Man Sent from God that in 1950 that this man was born in a log cabin in Burkeville, Kentucky. And that the morning of his birth on April the 6th, 1909, that about 5 o'clock in the morning, they'd raised that little shutter there on that window, and a strange light had come through that and was settled over his bed, little crib. And they asked themselves then, the mountain folks did, what kind of a man will this be? His mother and father were simple people. He had a little brother named Donnie and a little sister named Dolores. He was the oldest of the boys and the girls. His dad was hard working. So was his mom. Looks like she played a banjo. I showed that picture because there's some people that says we shouldn't play stringed instruments in church. In January 1950, I was present when this picture was taken. I did not see the pillar of fire, but I have in the meantime obtained a microphone like this one right here, and I have it in my office. It came from Raymond T. Ritchie's Tabernacle in Houston, Texas, where this picture was taken. And the first time I ever saw this man was the night before this photograph was taken. He came into the pulpit and he said, "Good evening, friends." I was sitting about 10 or 12 rows from the front among 10,000 people or more. And I thought he spoke to me personally, so I got up out of my seat and came and stood in front of the platform. And he went on preaching, and then he called a prayer line. The little boy, 7 years old, came up in front of him that they said the little boy was blind from birth. And I stood there when he prayed for the little boy, and the little boy began to look around like he could see, and he told the little boy, "Run back to your daddy." And the little boy looked around. He'd never seen his father, but a man standing right next to me called the little boy by name. The little boy came over the edge of the platform and leaped off in his arms, and that man began to cry. And I was wondering, being 16 years old, well, how do I know that little boy was even blind? But I witnessed that little boy playing with his daddy's red necktie. I saw tears running down that man's face. And I looked around and I said, well, now, if this little boy wasn't blind, this man sure is a good actor. And about that time, the little boy stopped playing with the necktie and reached up and put his two little fingertips on the tears, and then he felt his father's face like a little blind boy would. And when he identified that as his father from feeling like he had all of his life, he threw his arms around that man's neck and hugged him and looked out over his father's shoulder and looked me right in the face. I knew that I had seen a miracle. It changed my life. I'm standing there in the awe of this, and that man, little boy, walk away, and a second person came up in front of this brother, and she was about 26, 27 years old, and she had a little boy in her arms that was 6 years old, she said, and said he didn't have any feet. He was born with no feet. The man took the little boy in his arms and told her to remove the stockings off his feet, and she did, and he told us to bow our heads, and it appeared that while he's praying to the little boy, well, he dropped the little boy. And me being 16 years old, I stood there and I didn't exactly bow my head. I sort of bowed it, but I looked out of the top of my eyes, and when he had appeared that he dropped the little boy, well, I can almost hear that congregation going now. But right in front of my eyes, I saw two little feet created. And it's affected me to this day.
Hallelujah.
When I see a little child today and it's barefooted, the girls here in this church will tell you with their kids, I always reach for their feet. It's affected me because I saw two little feet created. That was God updating himself to me. Before then, I'd believed him was the same yesterday, today, and forever, but he became the same today in January 1950. He's the same today.
Amen.
The next day, well, a pastor, a Baptist pastor, of the 2nd Street Baptist Church in Houston, Texas, was arguing with him about divine healing. The pastor came there and made fun of him and said, well, this man's a divine healer. And finally, this man came down from up in the balcony and stepped up to the platform, and he called this pastor brother. He said, now my brother here calls me a divine savior, a divine healer. But he said, my brother preaches salvation, but I don't call him a divine savior. But I preach salvation and healing, and so therefore he shouldn't call me a divine healer. But Jesus Christ came to make us whole. He saved our soul and he heals our bodies. And he will also raise us from the dead. This photograph was submitted to Mr. George D. Lacey for examination to see if it had been a double exposure. And I think we can pull it up closer that you can read. It tells what it did on January 28th at the request of Reverend Gordon Lindsay, who was representing Reverend Branham of Jeffersonville. I received from the Douglas studio a 4x5-inch exposed and developed photographic film. This film was purported to have been made by the Douglas studios at the Sam Houston Coliseum, the city, during the latter part of January 1950. He examined it, and study was made of the entire surface. Eastman Kodak safety film, both sides of the film were examined under filtered ultraviolet light, and infrared photographs were made of the film. And then he comes upon this, and based upon the above described examination and study, I am the definite opinion that the negative submitted for examination was not retouched, nor was it a composite or double exposed negative. Further, I am of the definite opinion that the light streak appearing above the head in a halo position was caused by light striking the negative. It wasn't a freak. There was a light there. And this man many times said that he honored me by coming and letting his picture be taken with me. Now, this man had had a history of supernatural things happening. Back in 1930s, there had been a flood in Jeffersonville, Indiana. And he told people about it ahead of time, like the mayor said a while ago, that water was going to come and be 22 foot deep. And here's some pictures of that flood that happened then. And this is Shimp's Candy Store that he talks about on a lot of tapes about the red hots. But if you look right here, you can see the watermarks where there's been floods, watermarks on the doors. This is a photograph of an Army supply depot there called the Quadrangle, there on 10th Street in Jeffersonville. And you can see that it started off the flood. They had put tents in there for people, and Here's the street in front of it, but you see it even flooded that. And I think we have an aerial photograph of the entire city. And here's the bridge that comes across. This is a downtown area. You go over here, and there's the quadrangle. And right out here, you can see his church that he had. Right there. Only the roof is showing. Now, he said that when that occurred, that the Sunday before he'd preached and he'd left the Bible open on the pulpit. And that this pulpit, made out of old cedar boards, out of boxes, had floated up to the ceiling. And it come right back down in the place where it was. And pages of the Bible wasn't wet, and it wasn't even turned right there. And he said everything came right back down in the place like it was. But one day he was standing with me in front of his tabernacle. And he told me, he said, Brother Green, he said, the day that pulpit floated to the top, he said, pulpit came right back down in the same place it was, but he said the pews came down all crossways. And I said to him, I said, well, brother, then we'd have been spiritual, we'd have known that everything was all right in the pulpit, but something was wrong in the pews. Now, if you hear him on tape, you would say that he said everything came back down to its place, but he's talking about the pulpit in the Bible. The pews came down crossways. This is a picture of him and his first wife. Again, I want you to know that he played a guitar. Yeah. It's all right, Brother Chester. That's his wife, Hope, the mother of his son, Billy Paul. Sister Hope died that year. The flood came in about April, and she died in July. And he buried her in the Walnut Ridge Cemetery. And she died on Thursday and was buried on Saturday. And their little daughter, Sharon Rose, died on Saturday night, Sunday morning, and was buried on Monday. And he had said, I'll lay you in your mother's arms. And I always thought from reading that in the book, Man Sent from God, that little Sharon Rose was in the casket with her mother, laying on her mother's arm. But I read in the family Bible, Mrs. Brumback, Hope's mother, about how she died on Thursday and was buried on Saturday, and Sharon Rose died that night sometime and was buried on Monday. And Mrs. Brumback told me that what they did is they took and opened Hope's grave up down to the casket and then set the baby's little box right on top of it. So he put Sharon Rose in the arms of her mother. I stood with him at this cemetery one day, and that right there is Hope's grave. And this is where he was to be buried. And this burial plot was given to him to bury his wife by Mr. and Mrs. Brumback, because he didn't have any money to buy a burial spot. And he stood right there with me and told me that the day that he buried her, that those two bushes right there were about that high, and that she stepped out of one of those bushes and stepped up there and slipped her arm in his and watched her casket lowered into the ground. He said the dead in Christ are only as far away from us as we put them. But he said we can't communicate with them. If we do, that's spiritualism. I said to him standing there that day, I said, you know, you're going to have to go in the rapture. He said, why do you say that? I said, because that tree took your place. He didn't even answer me. He turned and went back to the car going down the hill this way. The road's right here, and he went right down there. In the meantime, they've cut that tree down. But I want you to notice it refuses to die. That's where he used to sit there and listen to the doves sing and coo, mourning his wife. So much so he wanted to take his own life. He tried twice. But remember this stump, this tree has been cut down, but look, it still lives. At an address in that city is 8th and Penn Street. And in 1933, he built a church. And here he is laying the cornerstone. And it's in that block that he put do the work of an evangelist and so forth, the things you can hear him talk about. That person standing over there is his brother Edgar, Uncle Doc we called him. This right here is Grim Snelling that later on became pastor of the church. At the time he lived in that house right over there when he built this building. Wasn't much of a building. You can see how simple it was, but look at his congregation. These are the old saints that used to sit around an old pot-bellied stove with a sawdust floor, wood heater, sing songs and take communion with. You can see what he looked like. But look at them. What a privileged people they were. And hardly any of them knew what was happening. I had the privilege to meet some of these folks before they passed away, but almost all the adults are gone now. Some of those children are still living. But they're the results of a meeting that he'd had there in Jeffersonville when he'd preached in the Masonic Hall. But that's the building he built. Look at the roads. This out here was a lily pond. Very simple building, but how many people you know today would go to church in a building like that? When he was building it, well, he only had about 86 cents in his pocket when he started building it. People laughed at him and says, you're building that building and they'll be made an automobile garage out of it before it's over with. And he's going to take an offering one day, and he saw a widow woman sitting on the front row fumbling to open her change purse, and he just changed his mind. He said, that's all right. We don't need to do that. And as a result, he never took an offering. He had a box in the back of the church. And he encouraged people that if they wanted to pay their tithes and give offerings, that's what he did. But he later on said that God had blessed his ministry, that he always paid tithes, and he always encouraged everybody else to pay tithes. And he said that you couldn't buy tapes with the tithes. He said that belonged to the ministry. I don't think he changed that. And I say that because that's quite a doctrine today. But he did say you need to take offering, give the people an opportunity to worship, because that's part of worship service, but he didn't say you had to beg and plead for money. Money never was his object. That's the front of the building. They did a little bit of improvements on it in the 40s. This is the congregation. Let me see if I can identify some of these people to you. This right here is his son, Billy Paul. That's him standing there in the pulpit. This is his baby sister, Dottie, Dolores, right here. And this right there is his black-headed mom. Grandma Branham, we call her. We call Sister Meady Sister Branham, but this one's always Grandma Branham. But again, look at that congregation. Just a simple, humble building. They love the Lord, and what a visitation. And see, all the way back there then, he had a crucifix in that church. This is the way the building began to look when they paved the streets and curb and put drainage in, put the light pole, moved it out of the front of the building over there. They named it Branham Tabernacle. He said they shouldn't have done that, but that's just what they did. It's never been known by any other name, but he wanted to be a place where people could come and find Jesus Christ. 1963, 62 and 63, they remodeled it, and they made it 1/3 bigger. They added on this section over here, and they moved the front door from here over to there. And these windows, and that's still the same cornerstone he's laying right there, and no more parking space around it. In the meantime, though, the church has bought this lot, and one behind it, one on the other side, so it'll give some parking to it. But we'll take you inside the building, and you can see what it looks like. It seats a little over 500 people, and the pulpit originally was in the middle over here, because this is the baptistry right behind here. And this ceiling originally was a curved ceiling. It was 4x8 Celotex. The old pot-bellied stove sat out here in the middle of it, and when they remodeled this and added this section over here to it from these posts over, you could see where times the building had caught on fire and it was burned back about 4 feet around the chimney up here. And just the grace of God and the mercy of God, it hadn't burned down. But I was there one time, a couple of years after he left us, and there was a controversy broke out about communion. whether we should use a cup or a tray. And he had shared with me a number of times how he had allowed the people to use a tray, but he preferred the cup. And I asked him, well, brother, why didn't you just use the cup? And he says, well, there was some of the folks, they didn't want to drink after this one or that one. And I regret to tell you, but it was because some of the whites didn't want to drink after a couple of the black sisters there. And he didn't agree with it, but he did that. But he told me about a little glass, a little amber-colored goblet that they had. And I was curious to find that little goblet, so I asked permission from Edgar, his brother, who was the custodian of the church. And Edgar and I went over to the church, and he told me he thought it was in storage in the attic of the church. And over the baptistry, there's a ladder. And so we pulled it down, and as we climbed up in there, we found boxes of things stored in here. And you can see where it's shaped up here in an arch. But this is the area that's over the platform. And we did not find the little goblet, but I made this observation, that out over the sanctuary, there's silotex. But over the pulpit area, there is cedar. Now that may not mean anything to you or a lot of people, but to me it does, because I know that when God built the tabernacle in Israel, he had them in the holiest of holies. They lined it with cedar. And I believe that when God had them build this tabernacle, it was already in this man's heart to do things right. And I don't know, but he knew what he was doing. But God knew that the seals would be preached underneath this. And that's the reason I believe that this attic is in cedar. Now, these things don't make believers out of you, but I want you to know that there's no details that are left out with what God did with this man. When he was 11 years old, he was playing marbles one day with, 9 years old. He's playing marbles with some friends, and when he got down to shoot, well, he looked up and he saw a vision. And he saw a vision of a bridge being built across the Ohio River where there was not one. And 11 years later, they built this Clark County Memorial Bridge. And he observed a section of that bridge falling. And 16 men fell to their death. And I want you to know that, you know, for somebody to tell a prophecy of one thing happening, well, there are certain odds for that to happen. But then when you add a portion of it falling, that's two facts. Well, then that makes the prophecy a little bit more complicated. But then when you say 16 men, that makes the odds become so great that you couldn't write the zeros on the wall of that church. And so when they were building the bridge, a portion of it fell. And exactly 16 men fell to their death. Not 13, not 21, 16. And Mayor Vissing remembered this. That's the reason that the old-timers in that city said, well, he foretold that bridge. He foretold the destruction. And I want you people to know that there is nobody alive, or have I read about them, who had more accurate prophecies of events like this than this man. This qualifies him to be a prophet. In any denomination, if he'd have joined them, they would have declared him a prophet. They may have not liked his teachings, but who liked the teachings of the prophets in the Bible? Israel didn't listen to them, but they said they were prophets because their prophecies were true. I want you to look at other things. Let's look at some of the details of this bridge. Look at this eagle that's up on it, and then let's look at the base of it down here. This right here, this symbol. What is that? That's the symbol of Indiana. The axe is laid to the root of the trees. Have we ever heard that? Now, this bridge reaches from Indiana over to Kentucky. And you know, most of the states, the river's a dividing line. But in this river, the Ohio River, the bank over here is the boundary. If you're standing on the bank fishing, you have to have Indiana license. If you're standing in a boat fishing, you have to have Kentucky fishing license. But I stood underneath this bridge with him, and he showed me that this section right here is the one that fell. There's an address just to the left of this bridge that's called the foot of Spring Street. So this is Spring Street, and this comes down here, and this is the foot of it, runs into the river. Now, I've often wondered, folks, what kind of a testimony could these old trees over here give if they could talk? And June the 11th, 1933, this nice promenade deck wasn't out here, but he had preached a meeting, and there was 4,000 people sitting on this riverbank. And as he went to baptize the 17th person standing out there about where that post is, a pillar of fire come whirling down over his head. Many people saw that, but there was a voice spoke out of it and said, as John the Baptist was sent to forerun the first coming of the Lord, so are you sent with a message to forerun his second coming. I believe that testimony. The day that I turned to him and I said, sir, I perceive you to be a prophet like the prophet Elijah. And I named off the attributes of Elijah. Loved the wilderness, preached against the Jezebel spirit, called the religious leaders of the world hypocrites, had no desire for fame or money, and had a tendency to underestimate the number of people that were following God. Elijah did that. Lord, I'm the only one. Now, we want this man to be like Elijah, but what about that attribute? Because that's the one a lot of people seem to major on. He held up his hand like in front of him like this, don't say any more. He said, you know, I don't say anything about it publicly about being a prophet, because people don't understand what a prophet is. But he said, I will not deny what the angel of God said on the Ohio River in June of 1933. Then he gave me the best advice that he ever gave me. He put his hand on my shoulder and he said, Brother Green, whatever you do, keep your balance in the Scriptures. People ask me all the time, Brother Green, out of all the experiences, which one was the greatest? I said, well, they were all great. Even if he told me a joke, I got a spiritual lesson out of it. But the one thing I'm glad that he told me that I wouldn't want him left out was that right there. Brother Green, keep your balance in the Scriptures. I believe that everything that he taught, said, and did has the authority from the Word of God. When he talks about the Scriptures and the Word of God, I don't think he's talking about his own sermons. I think he's talking about the printed Bible, Genesis to Revelation. Amen. Without that, he didn't have the authority to even be a prophet. But because that said he would come, then I think that everything he said and taught should be there, and he did teach the same message that Paul did. I told you a few minutes ago he lived across the street from behind the tabernacle. Now, in May of 1946, he came home one day and he went in the house, and when he started up those steps right there, a whirlwind blew him down on that porch. He said he came out of that tree. And his wife, Meady, which was his second wife, came out and said, what's wrong? And he told her, he said, this strange thing that's happened to me all my life, I'm going to go away to my secret place of prayer, and I'm not going to come back until God's given me the answer. What a moment of desperation in a man's life. He told us that we need to go someplace and stay and have an experience with God, drive a stake down and don't leave it until God visits us. That's just how desperate we need to be. But I want to point out something to you. This tree and this tree were mates, planted at the same time, grew up together. The pillar of fire and the whirlwind was in that one, and they cut that tree down. Just like they cut this one down, and all three should be the same size. This one you see has done nothing. That one has never been touched. But this one's been cut down twice. And it won't die. I say that where that anointing of life is, there's no death. Some people sometimes say message churches are dead. They may not be emotional, but how can they be dead if the words of eternal life are there? 1948, the people of Calgary, Canada took up a love offering of $18,000, and built this house for him. Notice the eave is shaped like a 7. If you go there now, this porch is enclosed. This section right here is the den. First time I went there, I went up these steps and went in there and spent 4 hours with him in this den with Brother Jackson and himself and his son Billy. He told me that there was 3 doors and 14 windows in the house. Come anytime I wanted to. They have put a fence and closed that, added another garage onto it, and this is somewhat the way it looks today, only they've got an electronic gate there now. That's more the way it looks now. His son Joseph lives there with his family. That's Jeffersonville. Let me bring you to Tucson, Arizona, where he moved the first week of January, 1962. He came here because he felt like God had given him a vision, and there was a divine purpose for him coming out here. He came to this city, Tucson, Arizona, and if you drive up through this city, you'll see that one of the most predominant landmarks is this A. Now that stands for the University of Arizona. You can drive up this road here and get up there and see that, and you can see the city. While you're up there, you can look around, you can see the mountain ranges. They're named Catalina, Hitchcock, Rincon, Ingram, Santa Rita, and Tucson. You take the first letter of each one of those and spell Christ. It is indeed an anointed place. It's 2,700 foot above sea level. It's on the exactly opposite side of the world from Jerusalem. The star pattern over Tucson is exactly that. It's over Jerusalem and Bethlehem. It is a place where God is truly visited, and this city of Tucson is named after this mountain because the Indians used to send their smoke signals and their messages from here, and the word Tucson means to send a message, and truly there has been a message come here. You get up on A Mountain, look out the city, you see downtown, and the original tabernacle was here, and the new one where you are tonight is over here. But if you look at these mountains across here, that's the Catalina Mountains. And if you go to Israel and you look for the cave of Elijah, you will find it at the end of the mountains, Mount Carmel. If you will go to Tucson, you come to the end of the Rocky Mountains, the Catalinas, and you will find this man's house right there. All these are just little types. There's a place that the Lord sent him the first week of January, either on Monday or Tuesday, the second week of January in 1962, a place called Sabino Canyon. They've since put this sign up here, and if you want to go to Sabino Canyon, you're at Tucson Tabernacle, you get on Grand and you go east, and you follow it till you get to Tanque Verde, you turn left, and then you go to Sabino Canyon Road, you turn left, and you go to the end of the road, and you will drive in and see this sign. There you'll board a shuttle, and for about $5 or $6 you can ride the 2 or 3 miles up to the top of the parking lot, or you can hike it. Now the second week of January, either on Monday or Tuesday, this man drove his car up and parked his car right here. Then you could park your car. He could drive your car, Pearry. He got out and used that restroom, and his wife says that he walked up this unfinished road right here behind these bushes. And he went over a little ways, and he went up to the top. And then he made several trips up there, but that day he went up there and he raised his hand up. A sword appeared in his hand, glistening in the sun. Then in September of '65, he went back up there, and instead of going back around where that sword appeared in his hand, he got to a fork in the trail and he went back west. He went around there and he started having some experiences with God, and he came out and he told it to us on a tape entitled Wings of a Snow White Dove, and it really has been a blessing to all of us. But he took a camera the next day and he went back and he took some pictures. And he took a picture like this one of that formation and that rock right there. And when I saw the pictures, I went to the mountain on March the 13th, 1966, looking for these places, and this is one of the first ones that I found to know that I was going in the right direction. Now, he had taken a picture of this formation right here, but he was underneath it, and when I was walking the trail and I came to this gap in the rocks right here and I looked and it's framed, I knew that I was going in the right direction. I was looking for a place to where he had taken a picture of this. Right underneath it was some limbs in it, And so each time I found bushes, I started trying to take it. And if you look, you can see that this is the breast of an eagle. That's his beak looking at you, and his wings pulled back there. Gets a little clearer right here. And this is the place where he was standing, and he took a picture up of this right here. But I was looking for a place where the word eagle was written on a rock that he said weighed about 70 tons. These are just some individual shots that we've made of that eagle formation. When I came down the trail and I stopped and stood right here, looking up at that eagle formation up here, right in front of my eyes, right there, was a word written. Right there. As we get closer, you'll see. Eagle. Now that's the day after I found it the first time. I want you to notice that these pieces are there and all of this. And if you stand back and look at that, you can see that's the back of an eagle. That's his beak, that's his eye, that's his breast. And that word is written right there, E-A-G-L-E. You get a little closer to it. E-A-G-L-E. None of these pieces have been broken out. First time I took people up there, I took 168 people, and I went back 3 days later, and it looked like somebody had shot it with a high-powered rifle. Some people didn't respect it. They broke it out. I've never seen a piece of that in anybody's possession. I don't think they want to show it to me. It's just like he said, they've even gone in there and scratched and beat these things off for personal keepsakes. You remember he had a first pull and a second pull, and he said he explained it, and everybody tried to imitate it. He said the third pull, he wasn't going to explain it to anybody. Well, I learned a lesson from this. First one here I found, told everybody about it, and they destroyed it. Second we found was where the sword appeared, and they did it the same way. So then when we found the cave, I didn't tell anybody. It's Brother Billy Paul. I took him up there the following week, and see they'd already started breaking it out. There's a place up there where he said a dove appeared to him. He was coming down the trail here and going around there. He walked up there, and there's a game trail back down to it, and he got down there, there's a little dove sitting right there. We've had several wonderful services there. It's sort of a amphitheater there. We've had several 800 people in there at times. And go up there, and we had our first year, we had our last night of our convention there. But that's where the little dove appeared to him. Just here a few weeks ago or months ago, we made the discovery that there was a country western singer named Sonny James that lost a daughter. And Sonny James used to sing Wings of a Snow White Dove to his daughter. She's a little girl. She was killed in an accident in Mississippi. And as a result of his sorrow, he finished that song, Wings of a Snow White Dove, in 1960. And that song became a real blessing to this man. And it was a comfort to him. And he even wrote a verse to it. Though I have suffered many a ways, I cried for healing both night and day. And I tell you that because who among us would have ever believed that a country western singer that had become an alcoholic and lost his reputation and his family, and then the sorrow of losing his daughter in an automobile accident, wrote a song that could become an inspiration and a blessing to the bride all over the world. So we need to be careful how we judge other people with what they're doing. Because if either one of us had written the song Wings of a Snow White Dove, we'd sure take credit for it. Because it's a blessing to us all over the world. First day that he went up there, I told you he parked his car right over here, and he used the restroom right there, and he went up this unfinished trail. He went over here, and there's a game trail right up that draw right there, and he went up, and when he got it behind these jagged rocks, he went up on top of these right here, and right there is where he raised his hand and the sword appeared. Now the reason I know that to be so is because when he went up the next day, he stood on this side of the mountain and he took 3 photographs of that area right there. And he wasn't aiming at these bluffs. He was taking a photograph of that right there because there was an attraction to that. And when you go up the trail, you come up there and you come to the back of it, you go up to the top. Here you go up and you walk out here, and he was standing out here where the sword appeared. Now, when we found that place, I came to church the next service and was quite excited, and I stand in the pulpit, and you know how we preachers are, we get excited. I can take you to the place. I can show you where it is. I've been there. I know that's the place. And after service, I got challenged by Brother Lenhart. And he says, okay, you said you could do it. And so he's a few years older than I am, so he provoked me a little bit, so I was going to teach him a lesson. So the next morning at 5 o'clock, I told him to meet me up there. And I didn't wear a jacket. I went without a coat because I knew I was going to run right up the side of that mountain and just leave that old man standing down there panting and puffing. And he wore his jacket, and another brothers with us wore his jacket. And by the time we got up here on the top, well, we were all perspiring, but they was worse than I was. And Brother Lenhart decided that he wanted to read what this brother said about this place. And he got out a book and he started reading all the different things about it. And what I had noticed is that that morning we got up there was no sun on top of this, and the shadows were over on the other side of the mountain because the sun was over behind this bluff. And when he read from that book, What is the Attraction on the Mountain, and Why Christ Speak, it said something about that sword appearing in his hand, and it was glistening in the sun. I said, brothers, I'm sorry. I said, this can't be the place. I said, because there won't be any sun here till almost 11 o'clock. I said, look, the shadows are on the other side of the mountain over there, and there won't be any sun here till almost 11 o'clock. And I was apologizing to them and feeling bad, and then after they got through getting me under conviction, then they wanted to pray. So they knelt, and if you've ever been around Brother Lenhart, you know he prays for everybody. And he prayed, and he prayed, and he prayed, and there I am, I'm kneeling there, and I'm getting perturbed. Because now they've got on a coat, and they're warm, and I don't have on a coat, and I'm chilled, and I'm getting cold, and I want him to get through. And when he gets through, he said, now, Brother Green, I think you ought to pray. Well, I purposed my prayer wasn't going to be very long. And so I bowed my head, and because I'd had an experience when I was 15 years old one time when my mother asked me one time they wanted a congregation to pray for me, I just knelt down in the middle of the floor, and all the people got around me and started praying, and I realized I wasn't being sincere, and they were, and I cried out to God. And it's the first time I ever had an experience in my life with speaking in tongues. And I know that it was real. I'm not ashamed of it, because I couldn't speak English, and I was trying to. And even after the service, the kids talked to me about going someplace to eat, and I turned to tell them it'd be all right with me, and I couldn't even talk English then. And I know the effect it had on my life, because I think it's the first time from the time I was 9 till I was 15 that I really asked God to fill me with His Spirit. And He did. And I had a wonderful experience that I'm not ashamed to witness of about today. Like Paul said, I would to God everybody could have one. Now, I've had some marvelous experiences with tongues in my life. I've spoken in English and had people in Hindi hear what I say, and I've spoken in English and there are people in Spanish understand me. I've had them speak back to me in Hindi and in Spanish, and I've understood them in English. So that's the kind of tongues I really believe in, not the evidence, but I do believe that speaking in tongues is a gift of the Holy Ghost. Amen. But as I was kneeling there that morning, that thought came to my mind that, Pearry Green, you need to be sincere. And so I tried to be sincere, and as I began to pray, I began to feel warm. And I thought that I was having some kind of a Pentecostal experience. And when I opened my eyes, the sunlight was coming right through that crack right there and striking right where I was kneeling. And that's the only place on an entire side of the mountain where the sun comes up at 5 minutes till 9, the second week of January every year. We've taken photographs of that with a clock sitting there, and you can see the sun rays come right through there and strike right there. And I know without a doubt But that's the place that he was standing when the sword appeared in his hand. Right out there. Standing on that rock. I was standing on that rock one year and it broke off. And so I brought it in, and it's the doorstop in my office. I can stand on that rock. He says about Sunset Mountain, he said, Moses stood on that rock and the pillar of fire appeared. I stood on that same rock and the pillar of fire appeared. And I'll never forget the day that tape was played in Jeffersonville, and brothers told me then that, just think, that same rock that Moses stood on, this brother stood on it over at Sunset Mountain. I made some friends that day. I asked them, how'd he get over there? One brother said he came over in the flood. I said, that's wonderful. Rock floated. And Noah was before Moses. So if he came over here with Noah, Moses must have been here. I tell you that, and I put that on this because I think sometimes we believers make this man sound foolish. See, if you knew the scriptures, you'd know that Paul said that rock was Christ. That's the rock he stood on. Not this one. Not the one at sunset. That rock was Christ. And the pillar of fire appeared. He mentioned to me that if he stood there where the sword appeared, you could look at Tucson through an upside down pyramid. That's what he called it. And if you look right out there, you'll see a mountain. That's downtown Tucson. You could go back to that shot. I want you folks to know something. God sent me to this city, and I'm not ashamed to say that anybody in this town that doesn't have a pastor, I'm his pastor. February of 1965, he went up to the end of Alvernon Way up here and parked his car and got out early in the morning and took a walk. And he walked up Pima Trail up there, and he got about here, and right up above him was this place here called Finger Rock. And while he was there praying, an umbrella-shaped amber-colored cloud came and settled over that mountain for 45 minutes. And he went back to Jeffersonville in February. He preached marriage and divorce. Told us about this experience. Now, I personally believe that he had the revelation of marriage and divorce for 20 years. But he had to get permission from God to grant the people who had messed their lives up the right to stay as they were in forgiveness, but don't do it again. As with Moses, it was not so from the beginning, but God showed mercy. And it wasn't that God revealed marriage and divorce to him. It's just that on that day, he gave that prophet permission to tell those who had their lives messed up to stay as they were, but don't do it again. Amen. That finger on the top is about 200 feet tall. Now, took that from an airplane upside down. That's the only picture I'll ever take like that. You will never get me to do that again. In 1962, they had a parade of homes. Different contractors built houses in this subdivision up at Ina and First, and they called it Vista de la Candelas, Village of Dancing Candles. You stand up there at night and look back down toward Tucson, the lights of Tucson dance like candles. And there was a real nice house up there, and they wanted $46,000 for it. And of course, he didn't have the money to buy it, but he went to see it. He and his wife liked it, and he sort of claimed it. First time I came to Tucson in '64, he showed me that house and some others, but he told me they couldn't afford this one. But that year, brother and sister Dow furnished the money, and he bought this house. And they started doing some remodeling on it. He changed these windows here, made them the color of the Urim and Thummim. He changed these doors, and these doors were carved hand carved in Mexico by an artist, and it shows all the game animals that he hunted. Now this right here is his coat of arms. If we can pull that in closer, it's a pyramid and a sword and an eagle. Now on the inside of that door, you go inside the house, well, this is his coat of arms, the pyramid, the Star of David, the sword, and an eagle. But if you go on the inside, it represents the continents that he had visited. But this scroll right here is his commission. And it says, June of 33, as John the Baptist was sent to forerun the first coming of Christ, so are you sent to forerun the second coming. On his den, picture this eagle, and that in Spanish says the nest of the eagle. On the inside are some of the big game animals that he'd hunted. As you look around the den inside, you can see some rainbow trout here. This one right here, he caught it on the River of No Return with Brother Clayton Sonmore on that little fly right there. And it was, the taxidermy work was done by Walt Disney Studio, and it held the world's record for 2 years. This is a deer that he hunted in Colorado for 15 years called Big Jim. The rifle on the top was a little .22 rifle that his wife Hope had saved up the money in the cookie jar that he bought. And this gun right here is the one that he called Blondie. He killed 55 head of game with it, did not miss a shot. I told him one day that I was going to write a book about the blonde in his life. I was going to say that she belonged to another man and was given to him by the other man, and that he killed over her 55 times. And he said, if you will write that book, Brother Green, and not tell people it's my gun, it will be a bestseller. These are some other guns that he had. I think at the time of his leaving us, he had about 34 high-powered rifles, and they'd all been given to him. That is Blondie, and that's the little rifle. And this is the .22 rifle that he shot the squirrels with that was spoken into existence. This is up in Colorado, River of No Return. This is the place where he used to go hunting 19 years in a row. Had some very wonderful things there. Spoke a storm out of existence this year. This over here is Corral Peak. This is Brother Earl Martin. That's Brother Banks Woods. That's Brother Hickerson. I don't know that brother, but you heard him tell this story because when he was a young cowboy, he used to go up there, and I think this is the last year he was there, but when he was a young cowboy, he went up there and would sit there at the gap in the fence, and all the ranchers would bring their cattle and they'd turn them loose on the open range back here. And they wasn't necessarily concerned with the brand as much as they were the blood tag, because they all want to be the same blood, and it had to be registered Hereford to be in there. But this is the place you hear him talk about on one of his sermons. If you look down in here, up at the cabin, that's the ranch house down in there, and then over there is the Corral Peak. In the den, there's some deer hanging up over this front window, and these are the animals that he killed in the Adirondack Mountains in New York. This is an elk, which he got in Colorado, and these are some more of the rifles that he had. There are different gifts in there that people gave him, and I think we've got some clearer shots. You can see this den Monday afternoon at 5:30. That's a set of moose horns. This is an Indian rifle decorated that way. This is an ivory tusk that Brother Sidney Jackson gave to him. These elephants came from Africa. The snowshoe, I think, from Canada. Mexico, the hat, these quivers from an Indian. This little wooden box right here, he kept polished rocks in there, rocks that he, when he walked through the woods and so forth, he picked up different colored rocks, and he came home and he had a little jar with sand and water in it in his garage, and he would polish them. And the first time I went there, before I left, he picked up that box and pulled a rock out of it, and he gave me this brown rock I carry in my pocket. When he handed it to me, he said, "Brother Pearry, that's a brown bear." And that started the tradition, because I've told that when you visit the den now, the family still purchases polished rocks, and they give everybody a rock out of that little box. And that little box was given to him by Brother Sidney Jackson from South Africa. He told Brother Jackson my presence. A gift from Africa by a missionary to Africa. And then he took the lid off of it and gave me my brown rock, and gave Brother Sidney Jackson one and said it was a yellow maned lion. He killed 3 pigs, 61, 62, and 63. In January 1961, he was in Beaumont, Texas, in the American Legion Hall in meetings. And it's the first time he ever met my wife. And from 1952, when I met him with Billy Paul, Billy's school buddy, until 1961, I was known to him as Billy Paul's school buddy. But at the sermon God Had Explained in Beaumont, Texas in January of 61, he met my wife and found out that she shot a high-powered rifle and was a better shot than I was. And so from 61 to 64, I became known as the husband of the little lady who shot the big gun. That's quite humiliating. But while he was there, he told me that he was coming hunting in Tucson. And I was a businessman there, and I was a member of a rod and gun club, and we had a rifle range, and I offered to let him go out and shoot on my membership. And he told me, he said, "No, I only have 3 bullets. And I thought to myself, he's going all the way from Indiana all the way to Arizona. He's only going to take 3 shots, 3 shells. Well, when I go hunting, I have to take 3 boxes. But he told me then, he said, one of them is to test my gun to see if it's off. If it's off, I have the second one to correct it with, and then I have the third one to kill my game with. I thought then, what a shot. Well, I want you to know he preached about as straight as he shot. And he drove tacks at 50 yards. He was a very humble man about it. When we shot our guns in British Columbia, he would help us sight ours in, and we put ours up, and then he got his out. Where I'd shoot mine in at 100, 150 yards, he'd move the target out to 300 or 400 yards. If I shot a pattern 6 inches, thought I was doing real good. If he didn't put them all through the same hole, he thought he was a failure. But those are the 3 pigs he killed in 61, 62, and 63. This chair used to be in Jeffersonville, Indiana. I think it's back there now. But that's the chair that he sat in, and he put his Bible on that arm and his pad on this one, and that's the chair he was in when the angel would visit him and give him the 7 seals. This little character right here is a black man bound in chains with a gag, and it was given to him by Brother Tommy Osborne. Show how the people of Africa are in bondage. This hornet's nest is the one that was in the backyard that he bumped into without his shirt on when he's mowing his yard. And it's in the message, Love Divine, and when love projects, where he spoke to the hornets and apologized to them, and they went back into their nest. This is a bobcat that he killed over here in Arizona, one of the last things that he killed. And we do not know when the little dove was put in there. We think it's between the time that he came home from Shreveport and the time he left for Jeffersonville, but we do not know who put it there and when it got there for sure. When he was 7 years old, he borrowed a piece of paper from a friend at the desk at school. He wrote this poem: I am lonesome, oh so lonesome, for that far away southwest, where the shadows fall the deepest o'er the mountain crest. I can see a lurking coyote all around the purple sage. I can hear a lobo calling down where the longhorns graze. And somewhere up a canyon, I can hear a lion whine in that far-off Catalina mountains at the Arizona line. And he wrote that. And when he was 57 years old, 50 years after he wrote it, he killed this mountain lion here in Arizona. That's an antelope. This is a mountain goat. This is a sheep. That's an antelope. I'm sorry, that's a deer. That's an antelope. And that's the caribou with the 42-inch horns that he tells about killing with Brother Biscoe there, that he saw the vision of and foretold it, and it was exactly 42 inches long. When I was 16 years old in Beaumont, Texas, the second week that I met him, the last night of the service, he told me I had a bowel trouble when I was sitting in that chair, but I don't have it anymore. And I was healed that night of a bowel trouble that I haven't been bothered with since. And that night after service, I assisted his brother Howard to take him outside, and when we got to the car, people were crowded around it so we couldn't get the door open, so Howard climbed over the car, the hood, and started the car, and it was a 1948 convertible, and he lowered the top, and I picked him up and set him over in the car. And while I am setting him over in the car, just about all I could do to lift him, he had his arm around my neck. He prayed a prayer for me. 14 years later, the first time I went to Jeffersonville and spent 4 hours that day in the den with he and Brother and Sister Jackson. When they finished the prayer, the same time he gave me the rock, he had me stand in the middle of this silver-tipped bearskin. He put his arms around me, and he prayed the same prayer he'd prayed 14 years before. And I knew then, in August of 1964, I would do what I'm doing tonight. This is where he killed the bear and the caribou up in British Columbia with Brother Bud Southwick. This is not the caribou horns. This is another hunt. And that's not Blondie. That's another rifle he had, because he believed that he had a vision that he killed a giant bear, and he was using this gun to kill the bear. But on this trip, Bud wanted him one day to go with him, and the boys were going to go another way, Billy and Blaine and Dennis and Brother Biscoe. And Brother Branham, to keep from hurting Bud's feelings, went with him instead of going with the boys. And when the boys came back, they told him about seeing this big bear. And I tell you this because there's a controversy about it, saying Brother Branham still got to kill that bear. But Brother Branham told us the year that I was up there, and he told Brother Bud Southwick this: Bud, I believe that I missed God when I went with you to keep him hurting your feelings instead of going with the boys. I was disobedient. And he says, I've repented and I've asked God to forgive me. But he said, if you ever see that bear, please call me. I would still like to try to kill it. Now, the people now who still feel that Brother Branham has to come back and kill that bear, be careful that you don't make him sound foolish, because that bear would be over 37 years old now. And if it's the same bear that he saw. And I think it's time that we just let this man be a man instead of trying to make him a god. I've told you a lot of things about him. His face is still shabby. Some people believe him to be God. Some people have substituted him for Jesus Christ. He said, don't do that. To do that makes me antichrist. To do that makes me anti-word. And I think that you'll see the people that have that spirit, they're against everybody else who tries to do anything for that. And the only motive that I can find somebody to stop somebody from preaching this message would be because they're anti-word. And these people don't believe in preachers. Brother Branham talks about this scene in his message. Talks about standing up in British Columbia, so high up that the Alaskan highway looks like a trail. He talks about going up there because he got away from all the spirits and everything down here. And maybe I could shed a little light for this on some of you, see, because in 1950, when Brother Branham came to Beaumont, Texas, he stayed in the Alamo Plaza Hotel. 1961, he came back. He stayed in the same room in the Alamo Plaza Hotel. In 1964, when he came back and I was the sponsoring pastor, I went and got him the same room. And when I took him to that room, he come back outside and he said, "Brother Green, can you get me another room?" And I thought to myself, well, this motel is getting old. So I said, "I sure can, brother. Get your suitcase and we'll go over here to another motel." So we went over to the Ridgeway Motor Inn, which was a brand new motel over on the highway. And when I took him in the room, 83, he come back out and he said, "Well, this is much too nice." I thought to myself, one's not nice enough, the other's too nice. Can't make up your mind. I couldn't have been more wrong, because 3 weeks later we're in Tampa, Florida. Somebody else is in charge of getting the rooms. And I'm there and I'm in the same motel. And he goes in his room and he comes out and he tells the brother in charge, he says, "Brother, could you go up front and see if they've got another room?" And I thought to myself, standing there, here we go again. And when they walked away, he turned to me and he said, "Brother Green," he said, "last night somebody committed adultery in that room." And he said, "I don't want to stay there." So then I realized what he's talking about, that up here is the only place he could go, but he get away from spirits and get away from all these things, because every spirit that came around he was sensitive to it. That's the reason the prophets love the wilderness. There was an incident that happened that the Palmer family came out here to see him. And they told him, said, "Brother Branham, we stopped in Texas last night and stayed in a hotel. And said last night several times the Spirit came to us and said, 'William Branham is God. William Branham is God.'" And Brother Branham told him, he said, "Well," he said, "you know, a certain family stayed there last night and they believe that, and that spirit is still in that room." One of the times I was preaching in the old tabernacle, I was preaching about making a man God, where they tried to make Paul God and Apollos God and different ones. And 3 times while I was preaching that morning, he's sitting in the audience and something says to me, "There he is. There he is. There he is." And after service, we've dismissed the congregation, and I'm coming out by the pulpit, and he comes down the aisle and he meets me, not here but down at the old tabernacle, and he meets me right there, and he pays me his tithes, and I still got the $20 bill in my pocket. And he said, you didn't have a box back there?" And I said, "No, sir, I haven't got a bill yet." He said, "Well, I want to give you my tithes, and I want you to know, folks, I haven't been broke since then. You know, I've always had $20. Haven't been broke since then." Catch that, don't you? Some people got a magic wallet. I got a magic money. An anointed money. But he said, "You know, Brother Green," he said, "you know, in Psalms 22 when David says, 'My God, my God.'" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Who was that?" I said, "Well, you've told us that was Christ in David." He said, "That's right." He said, "Sometimes I have to say things in the first person. It's not me, but it's him." I said, "Brother Branham, did you catch something in my spirit this morning?" He said, 3 times. He said, "Brother Green, whatever you do, don't you forget I'm a Kentuckian." And some of you folks may think that maybe I can make a presentation like this and lay off of the deity doctrine. Lay off of those who make him Jesus Christ. Lay off of those who worship him and baptize in his name. But you see, I'm under a commission from him. He told me that God sent me here to pastor those people so that I could tell them they were wrong. And he said, "You tell them, and you tell them, and you tell them." And I want to ask this congregation, have I been faithful? If he told you to do that, what would you do with it? Now, if he didn't tell me that, then I'll face him one day. But one day I was challenged by these, and I said, "Brother, look, I know you're wrong, because Brother Branham called you by name and told me you were wrong and told me this about you." And he said, "Well, He told me things about you too. And I said, they must have been good. He said, why do you say that? I said, because you hate me bad enough that if it was bad, you'd have done told them. The Lord helped me when I came here 32 years old. I want you to know He did. I'm 69, going on 70 now. And my name was Green, and I was the greenest one, and I was a newcomer in this message, and if I'd have known then what I know now, 10,000 people couldn't have talked me coming here. But you're going to have to get up real early in the morning and talk to a lot of people and travel a long ways to find somebody who's had more exposure to all this than I have. And I'm telling you this, keep your balance in the Scriptures. And Brother Branham said to substitute him for Jesus Christ was a carnal interpretation of a spiritual revelation, and that makes him anti-Christ. And when he preached bruised serpent, those brothers came to him and promised him they wouldn't do that anymore. They have not kept their word. Up there in British Columbia, there was an Indian family named McDonald's. Not the McDonald's, but that was their name. And he was up there hunting, and this is Bud Southwick over here. And, Billy and Blaine and Dennis and Brother Biscoe went off hunting, and they killed a caribou, and they came back to get a horse to pack it in with, and they took one of Bud's best horses, the one who would pack the stove rattling on his back and everything, and went off over there to get the caribou and bring it back. And when they got over there, well, a bear had found the carcass, and the scent of the bear, the horse spooked and got away from them, and they came back just packing a little bit of the meat. They were very sad because that horse was worth about $700 back in the 60s, and that was about like $7,000 now. And Bud was very sad, and because he'd lost his best horse. And this man, in a little while, come in and told him, he said, don't worry about your horse, Bud. He said, I see you getting him back. He said, I see you, I hear the horse nicker, and you take a bridle and you go out and catch him and bring him back. You'll get your horse back. And in just a few minutes they heard, oh, now if you didn't recognize that, that's a horse. And I know why you didn't recognize, not because my imitation is not any good, but maybe you've been around preachers that say, days of miracles over, no such thing as divine healing, and that's a donkey. How do you like the way I get that in, folks? You can't get mad at me. You just have to hear the truth. But Bud takes it, goes and gets the horse and comes back. Well, this is Oscar, an Indian boy. He had lost a black horse. He looks at this man and he says, you prophet. He said, Oscar, why do you call me a prophet? He said, man in Bible lose donkeys. Prophet tell him where to find father's donkeys. Talking about the story of Saul and Samuel. You believe I'm a prophet? Yes. Well, I tell you what, I see your horse in the snow with two other horses. So the winter passed and the spring came, and Oscar didn't find his horse, so he writes a letter to Jeffersonville. Me no find horse. This man has him written back and say, all I know is I saw your horse and two horses in the snow. Indians say, snow not here, snow up there, me go where snow is. He went where snow was and he found his horse and the other two. And I happened to be up there the next year, and we look out one day, and here comes his sister Louise riding that black horse, and he says to me, here comes Louise riding Oscar's horse. I was there when that was fulfilled. He didn't even say anything about her pants. This is in Kentucky, where he preached a meeting in a campground. I want you to see how fancy he really was. Look what a cathedral he preached in. Didn't matter to him. All he was doing was just wanting a place to preach the truth to the people who listened. This is the barn of the old infidel that let him hunt on his land, and this is where he would park his car when he would go hunting. That's where the infidel lived, and that fence post right there is the one he talked to him about. He said, see, you got an apple tree right there, and right here, you know, the sap goes up and down. What tells you to do that? But what tells this right here? What's the difference in this here? And he taught that man about the reality of God. I stand right there. This is Brother Charlie Cox pointing down at Coachman's Holler down there, where he spoke the squirrels into existence. I asked the kids one time, what'd y'all do with those squirrels? They said, we ate them. This is Durban, South Africa. racetrack. He stood up there and preached. 85,000 people out here. Wild man was brought to the service one night. Had a collar on, a chain on each side. People had to hold him between them like that to keep him from attacking them. And they brought him up in front of this man. And man told him, said, turn him loose. And they said, can't do that. He said, I said in the name of the Lord, turn him loose. And they ran their hands down the chain and unsnapped the chains. He said, in the name of Jesus Christ, stand up and be made whole. The man turned around and was made whole. 30,000 people accepted the Lord Jesus. The next day, the mayor of Durban, Sidney Smith, organized a parade, and he was staying on the 5th floor of this hotel right here. This man was, and they sent 7 truckloads of canes and crutches and cots and chairs and things that people left. And those 30,000 people had been healed the night before and saved, marching down the street singing, only believe, only believe. In the early 70s, we baptized Sidney Smith, that mayor, in the ocean in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Nobody had gone and told him who he was. But when we told him, he believed and was baptized. I'll spend eternity with him. Lakeport, California, 1954. He's preaching. Notice the pulpit, the lilies, microphone. Notice that light, this altar. This is one picture. We take the next picture. Pulpit's the same size. Lilies have grown taller or gotten closer. Pulpit, there's that light. This over here is an altar. The 7 spirits or messengers. There's a curtain-like thing there. Standing up there, he said, the angel of the Lord with the fingertips licking from his finger lips. This right here is the profile of Jesus Christ. This right here is a lion of the tribe of Judah, lily of the valley. You want to hear what he has to say about this picture? Look, listen to Watchman, Water of the Night, and Revelations 4 and 24 elders. You know, Ezekiel, when he saw visions of God from the loins up, he saw amber, from the loins down was fire. He had 2 sons, one named Billy and one named Joseph. This is Billy baptizing Joseph at age of 12. I was there that night, and I took a little handheld snapshot camera and stuck it around the door, and as far as I know, that's the only photograph of that incident. But he would have been thrilled. Place here in Arizona called Sunset Mountain. Over about 70 miles north of Wilcox. It's only about 40 miles northeast from here. But this mountain range, entire mountain range, is called Sunset Mountain because of the tallest peak back here. And all of these fingers run out here like this and these things. And he would go hunting over there. And if you go over there, you can drive up here. And this is up on top of a thing called Rattlesnake Mesa. You have to be careful because right there's a place where the road's only narrow enough for a small vehicle, not a big one. But you can go there and drive out there. But when he came up from over here up over the top, and we'll see that as we go further. And he camped right down in here. This is where he camped. Later on, I want to show you the end of this bluff right out here, and I want to show you a spot right there. But when he drove up in here, he would camp right in here. Now, the day that he went up on the top to chase the pigs off, he came up near the side and went out on this peak here and sat down, and that's where the 7 angels appeared to him. May the 17th, Life magazine, picture of Rockefeller with his new wife, Murphy, carried a photograph of an odd sight at height. Odd sights at heights, haunting photographs of a moonbeam rainbow and a cloud ring too big to be true. Dr. James McDonald had collected about 83 to 85 photographs of it, and this was taken by a man between here and Flagstaff. Now, that picture is copyrighted. We've made thousands of them, but I purchased the rights from him to duplicate that, and if anybody ever asks you, you can tell them you're doing it underneath our permission. But let's see what Dr. McDonald says. Hovering like a giant smoke ring, a great cloud appeared at sunset over Flagstaff, Arizona, February 28th, and set off a continuing scientific mystery. Watchers struck with the cloud's odd shape and huge size took pictures like these 4 at different times and from widely scattered locations in the state. Dr. James McDonald, a meteorologist at the Institute of Atmospheric Physics in Tucson, has been accumulating the pictures. And I'll have some things to say about Dr. McDonald tomorrow. The FBI file on him has just been released, and they were investigating him for his research in UFOs. Using them as a basis for a trigonometry calculation, he has made a startling discovery that the cloud was at least 26 miles high, 30 miles across, a lot higher and bigger, he says, than a cloud should be. The circle was too high to be made by a jet plane, and so far as Dr. McDonald can determine, there were no rocket planes or bombs being tested nearby that day. He hopes anyone else with pictures will lend them to him, for he would like some more clues about the cloud 26 miles up. No water droplets exist at that height to make a cloud. Now, Science Magazine later on had an article on April, they had one on April the 18th, and then Weatherwise had one where it talked about a rocket blowing up that day out of Edwards Air Force Base, and he talked about how high and how hard the wind would have to be blowing to get it over here. And a lot of people who want to be skeptical, they read and says, oh, well, that's what caused it. But they failed to read the rest of the article. Dr. McDonald in that article even says how many tons of water it would take to form that cloud, 26 miles high, 20 miles wide and 30 miles long, and that rocket didn't carry that much moisture there. And so they want to say, oh, we've got an explanation. When I spoke to Dr. McDonald about it, he called us superstition. But I told him simply like this, Dr. McDonald, if you had an explanation of the cloud, I wouldn't be able to believe what I believe about it. But since you don't have an explanation, then I can believe what this man said about it. There's quite a story behind his testimony and his death and his suicide. This is another picture of the cloud. They have 80-something photographs of it. See, this is the way it appeared, but if you turn it sideways, it's when you see the face. This is him over at Sunset Mountain. Looks like a man to me. This rock is still there. Just about all the others have been packed off, but that one's too big. It takes a backhoe to get it. Here's the rock he was standing in front of when he was shoveling dirt on that fire. That's Brother Gene Norman. One of the men was with him when the angels came down. His face is getting a little clearer now. These men were with him after the cloud came and so forth. And this is Brother McAnally, the old prospector showed him the place, and that's Brother Tom Simpson, that's Brother Ed Martin, that's Brother Donovan Wirt, Sister Nadine's husband. This brother's deceased. This one left us November last year. Brother Roy Roberson is still with us. Brother Branham has left us. Brother Welch Evans, that's Brother Glenn McHughes. Brother McHughes' brother, that's Billy Paul and Brother Borders. There's 6 of them that have gone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 5 witnesses left to that event over there. I think this is a little closer shot. You wonder what Brother Donnie's laughing about and Glenn's laughing about is Brother McHugh's putting horns on Brother Welch Evans. How many of you would have noticed that? Probably seen that picture hundreds of times and never noticed that Brother McHughes was playing a trick on Brother Welch Evans. Brother Donnie sees it and he's laughing and Glenn's looking at it. The others don't see it. Brother Branham was standing right here shoveling dirt on that fire when a whirlwind broke over the bluff and tore this chunk out right here. threw those pieces, he said, for 50 or 60 yards, size of a man's fist, broke them all up in pyramid shapes. Said he left that white cross like that. And that whirlwind picked up and went back over to the north from where it came. 1969, we made the discovery that out on the end of that was this profile. Brother Branham's forehead, eyes, nose, mouth, and chin. How many thousands of years did it take the wind, rain, weather, and everything else to carve that profile on the end of that bluff? And looking right out at the place to where the 7 angels came down to him, I don't think that's a coincidence. As I said, it doesn't make believers out of anybody, but if you're a believer, it does something to you. There's an eagle flying over it that day we took that picture. Well, on his belt buckle says Bill. His face is pretty clear there. People called him William Branham. Bill. But to me, that was Elijah. That was to come. This man right here is named Earl Midcalf. 1962, he was a member of the FBI Special Weapons Expert, dying of cancer. Brother Branham prayed for him, told him he was healed for 2 years. He went around testifying, still sick as he could be. Everybody telling him he's going to die. Came here in about January of 1964 and was over here at Ramada Inn, and somebody got Brother Branham to come pray for him in the dark, and Brother Branham took him by the hand and started praying for him. He just quit, and he says, "Brother, I prayed for you 2 years ago. You're healed." This man today is disgustingly healthy. I call him Lazarus of this message. Anybody hasn't heard his testimony, you can get a copy of it at our office, and he lives in Oklahoma, and he'll go anywhere in the world to give his testimony. I want you to know it's worth listening to. If you need faith, Brother Midcalf can help you with it in Brother Branham's message. I want you to see, Brother Branham was a lot of fun to be around. He wasn't stiff and starchy. I got a picture of him underneath that car with both legs sticking up in the air. Oh, that's when I went hunting with him. Now, I had taken my canvas coveralls, and I thought maybe if I fell and got wet like Brother Biscoe did, I might need something else to put on. So I took that old wool suit, had a hole in the pocket where the moths would eat, and I took that white shirt and tie. And we got up there that morning. You folks got time to tell you a story? It's 10 o'clock? Some of you may never hear this. But the day we got up there hunting, Brother Bud Southwick was telling us that the day before, a black bear had got in the cabin with Sister Lila, and she'd run out of the cabin and grabbed both little boys by the hand, and Rocky, and come running out past Bud about a quarter of a mile away, and Bud says she's running fast enough, hollering, "Bear, bear, bear," that the boys are sticking straight out behind. And he told Brother Branham that she was running fast enough, she ran across the Toad River and never even got her feet wet. But what that did is that gave me the understanding there was a bear in the neighborhood. That night when we went to bed, Brother Branham and Brother Southwick slept in the camper. Brother Branham and Brother Southman. The Southwick slept inside the cabin. Billy and I slept in a tent. About 1 o'clock in the morning, I reached up to pull my duffel bag underneath my head, and when I did, I got a handful of fur. And I said to Billy, "Billy, where's my flashlight?" He said, "I got it over here with me." He said, "What's wrong?" I said, "There's something in this tent besides you and I." I just got a handful of fur. Well, I sort of slid down my sleeping bag and pulled the top down, and Billy, he got up and eased over toward the door and then turns the flashlight on. And it's a house cat. And he takes the house cat and puts it outside and zips it down real tight, and the next day he tells everybody on me. And they ribbed me so hard, this Texas preacher don't know the difference between a house cat and a bear. Well, that day we couldn't go out. It had snowed that night, so I took my car. They needed something from the store about 3 or 4 miles down the road, and I went down to the Toad River Lodge, and I think the Clements are here, and I think their son and daughter work there now. And they told me to drop that cat off down there, so Dennis and I went down there and dropped the cat off, and I come back, and that night we stayed there again, and that night when I went to bed, I made sure I had my flashlight. So sometime during the night, Billy Paul wakes me up and says, "Perry, where's that flashlight?" I said, "I've got it over here with me tonight." I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "Oh, that cat's back in here again." Well, that tent's about 10 foot across, and I just said, "Well, Billy, it can't be that cat because it's on me too." Well, when I turned the flashlight on, Billy Paul was standing up in his suitcase trying to get to the door, standing in his sleeping bag trying to get to the door. And when I turned the light on, that house cat had come back. So he picks up the cat and he throws it at the door, and he misses the door. The cat hangs onto the side of the tent and bounces back in Billy's face. And we have really got a commotion going on. And Brother Branham comes out of the camper in his long johns with his rifle, thinking a bear has got a hold of his son. So I want you to know they were fun to be around. We had a good time. And almost everything he told us had a spiritual lesson to it. So the next morning when we got up, we couldn't go out again. Well, instead of putting my coveralls back on, I got up and Billy ran in the house to dress, and I put this suit on and I strapped that 38 on right there, and I got my Bible, and they were all in the cabin, and I walked to the front door and I pulled that pistol out and I got my Bible in his hand and I just kicked the door open and I say, "Service, church is in session. Today's the Lord's day." And Brother Branham slides out of his chair and gets on his knees and says, "Parson, don't shoot me. I promise you I won't do it no more. Parson, don't shoot me. I promise you I won't do it no more." Coming back from British Columbia a couple of years before, he'd been despondent. He'd wanted to quit. And if you get on the Idaho-Montana border, you're driving south, you look south for about 40 miles before you get to Lima. You can see this out in front of you. There's this mountain range. W-I-L-L-I-A-M. M-A-R-R-I-O-N. B-R-A-N-H-A-M. When God created America and he cleaned out his mortarboard on the Continental Divide, he built a monument to this man's life. He stood right there and told me this over here was his conversion. That's in 33 when he had the meetings. That's in 46 when he went out with the first pull. Remember, he got sick and he dropped off for a while, and then he went back and had a few meetings. He told me that this right here was the lowest point in his life. That was the income tax case. And he went out when that was settled for a few meetings. Then this second pull started. Went up higher, and it had dropped off for a while, and his teaching ministry started, and he got off, and this is the third pull, and see, it runs off into eternity. The day we stood there, he said, "Brother Green, I'm right about there in my life." There's him standing there, and it's covered with snow. There it is, covered with snow. There it is up a little closer. There are the three pulls. First pull, second pull, third pull, sticking up above the clouds. How many other people you know has got something like that will testify to their life and tell their life story, spell their name, all three words? Is that a coincidence? At Brother Branham's memorial service, December the 29th, 1965. I was in charge, sort of like the MC. Other brothers spoke. I led a song between each one. When I was supposed to read the obituary, this is what I referred to. We didn't need to tell this man's life story. God did it. When he created the Continental Divide on the Idaho-Montana border. Different shots of him up close. Preacher. His memorial stone. Branham. Can we get this up close? Behold, I will send you Elijah in the days of the voice of the seventh angel. William Marion Branham. The seven church ages. From Ephesians to Laodicea. Seven angel messengers. Paul, Irenaeus, Martin, Columbia, Luther, Wesley, and Branham. His commission is John the Baptist was sent to forerun the first coming of Christ. You will forerun his second coming, June of 33. His theme, Jesus Christ the same yesterday and today and forever, Hebrews 13:8. He preached the seals. 4-horse riders. This is a very famous painting that hangs in an art gallery in the Soviet Union. When I was over there, I was able to buy a slide. I want you to see the carnal interpretation they put to it. Every one of these characters you can find something about in the book of Revelations. But I want you to know that he said this was the Antichrist. Had a bow, no arrows. This here was the Antichrist. Had a sword, a bloodbath. Here's the Dark Ages, weighed in a balance. And there's the gray horse, ridden by death. You know, when we see it, it's so simple. We think that there's so many things got to happen. But when Brother Branham preached the seals, all of this had already occurred. He just told us history, what had happened, and told us we was living under this age here. This is humorous, but this is a cartoon. They just announced on TV that there's no tomorrow. There's no tomorrow. There's no tomorrow. They just announced it on TV. Panic, panic, run, hide, flee, run for the hills, flee to the valleys, run to the rooftops. Somehow, I never thought it would end this way. I thought Elijah was to come first. The world knows. This man Schultz was an acquaintance of Brother Branham. People who read Peanuts know that Elijah was to come. Would it offend you if I told you he's already come and they didn't know it? John the Baptist came and they didn't know it. So one could come now and the world would know it. Thank God for eye salve. Brother Branham. Bill to some. Dad, brother, uncle. But to me, that was Elijah. He brought a message different than everybody else's. There wasn't a denomination with him, but he believed it and he lived it. And it's strange how so many people come along today and they're gifted and they say, he's like William Branham. He's like William Branham. He did like Branham did. Reminds me of somebody saying margarine tastes like butter. I've never heard anybody say butter tastes like margarine. Why do they use him as the norm? They want to say the humblest man they ever met. Word of knowledge without mistake. But he wasn't called to preach or teach about things. I think sometimes when they say he was easier than a child to be influenced. That's Gordon Lindsay's comment. Another man said, well, he's shuck. That's blasphemy. Pat Robertson said, Pearry Green led 700 people to the cemetery to raise William Branham from the dead. I know that's false. I believe Brother Branham is going to come back. I believe he's going to lead to resurrection. And it's okay with me if I believe I'm going to be the first one to see him. But you look for us all. He's got a promise. Hot Springs, Arkansas, 1948. 35 years old. Fishing with Brother Minor Arganbright. At a wedding in his office in Jeffersonville. Preaching in Oakland, California. All these other things he did, but that's what he's called to preach. This is a tourist card put out by the tourist department of the nation of Israel. So many people wanted to be baptized in the Jordan River, so they went up close to the Sea of Galilee, where it comes out of the Sea of Galilee over here, and they built this place. They've got nice dressing rooms over here, and they even supply these gowns. And you can come along here and walk down these stairs, and you walk like that, and you gradually get deeper into the water, and like that, and then come back out and go over there and dry. And they advertise it as a place for people to come and be baptized. But I want you to notice something. Repent and be baptized. Acts 2:38. No Matthew 28:19 to them. Now, the Trinitarians complained about that. But when the Jews did it and just read it, they recognized that Acts 2:38 was the fulfillment of Matthew 28:19. Brother Branham, when he was a young man, went out, kneeled down one day in a sagebrush patch there in Jeffersonville near Parkview Junior High School to pray for his dad. And while he's praying, the Lord Jesus appeared to him. And later on, he began to tell us when he saw the picture called Hoffman's Christ at 33, which is a section of this right here. No such picture as Christ at 33 by Hoffman. It's Christ and the Rich Young Ruler by Hoffman. And they take this portion of it and sell it. And this painting is owned by the Riverside Church in New York City. But Brother Branham said this is what the Lord Jesus looks like. He said Hoffman caught the inspiration. And look, if Hoffman is looking at a young man, then the night that Jesus appeared to Brother Branham, there by the Parkview Junior High School, wouldn't he look at him just like he looked at the rich young ruler? That young man. And so I ask people, when you get to heaven, if you believe the Trinity, how many are you going to see? What's God going to look like? What's Jesus going to look like? What's the Holy Ghost going to look like? But to me, in him dwelleth the fullness of the Godhead bodily. And they've come out right now with archaeology and everything, and they're saying they've got a new face of Jesus Christ. And he looks like a mean one. But to me, I believe Brother Branham went beyond the curtain of time and come back and told me what that place was like. I believe that he saw the Lord Jesus like Paul did on the road to Damascus. And I personally believe that this is what Jesus Christ looks like. What does Brother Branham's message do for me? Because I knew Brother Branham, I believe that I know Jesus Christ better than I would have if I didn't know Brother Branham. I think what he taught, what he did, what he said, who he was, the whole purpose of it was for one thing, and that was to point me to Jesus Christ. as my Lord and Savior. I think it's important to know Brother Branham was God's prophet. But just to know he was the prophet and not know the Lord Jesus, you could be lost. Brother Branham cannot save you. Brother Branham did not save you. Brother Branham needed a Savior. I've had people tell me there's no difference between William Branham and Jesus Christ. I say, I have a question. Did Jesus need a Savior? No. Brother Branham did. That's one difference. Will the words of Jesus fail? No. Heaven and earth will pass away. Did Brother Branham say his words could fail? Jesus never said that. Did Jesus ever say, "Thus saith the Lord"? No. Brother Branham did. Jesus said, "I say unto thee." That's three differences. Jesus could have said, "Truly Elias shall first come, and his name will be William Branham." And then everybody would have named their little boy William Branham. But Jesus was named by an angel of God. He was Emmanuel, God with us. He came, he's here, and he's coming. He sent Brother Branham and trained him and adopted him as a son to show you and I that we too can be like Jesus Christ. Amen. Jesus was virgin born. Brother Branham was not. Let me encourage you to investigate if these things be so about Brother Branham being a prophet with the spirit of Elijah. And if so, then listen to what he taught and see if it doesn't cause you to love Jesus Christ more. If you get to the place to where you think you can make it on your own righteousness, your own works, you don't need him anymore. And you don't love him anymore. But Brother Branham would say, "Excuse me for being a baby. Something gets in my heart when I talk about him." He says, "I want to take every opportunity I can to say that I love the Lord Jesus." And he concluded more services singing the song, "I love him, I love him, because he first loved me and purchased my salvation on Calvary's tree." Thank you. You got 3 hours of it. Yes, I love him. I love him because he first loved me and purchased my salvation on Calvary's tree. Second most popular song he finished with, if we'll stand, "Nations are breaking, Israel's awakening, signs that the prophets foretold." You want to know what time it is? Look at Israel. Nations are breaking, Israel's awakening, the signs that the prophets foretold. Encumbered, return, oh, disperse to your own. The day of redemption is near. Men's hearts are failing for fear. Be filled with the Spirit, your lamps trimmed and clear. Look up, your redemption is near. Thank you for coming tonight, being patient with me. Pray it'll be a blessing to somebody. As you go tonight, Heavenly Father, I appreciate you.